Hello. I know it's different. It's a different face, a different voice. But I am Thomas Berry. Good morning to you all. I am hosting today in the place of my brother Lee Vaughn, who is at a beautiful convention in Atlanta. He's on the red carpet. He's interviewing people today, and it's going to be van glorious. But he gave me the okay to run the board, man the team, and brother Rodney as well as sister Rashi will be joining me shortly. We are about to do what we do every Saturday. We're going to put together a great show for you all today. And so I'm going to start off with what my brother Lee would typically do. He would typically just start off with his morning rant. And so I'm going to get mine going, and I will make it quick as well as we wait for Sister Rasha to get in. My morning rant is simple. I am trying to figure out for the life of me, why is it that we decided that we wanted to exclude people who are immigrants and get them out of this country in order for us to start asking children to do labor. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I am talking about in Florida, where Governor DeSantis is talking about changing the child labor laws so that if you're 14 years old, you will be able to work overnight. That has ramifications of epic proportions, ladies and gentlemen. Those ramifications could set families back for generations. And as Americans, we have to step up. We have to be able to voice our displeasure, and we must not be shamed into being quiet. I think the conversation around the country has gone a little too much to one side or another. When we start saying that education don't matter, and we start cutting the Department of Education, and I know people are going to use the whole excuse that, well, education has failed. Well, I remember another Republican administration messing with education. Who remembers No Child Left Behind? And how did that Republican fix help children? The education got worse. And if you know better, like I know better, I also remember No Child Left Behind being one of the vehicles for vouchers and privatization of education. And we got into this long, big push of charter schools right after No Child Left Behind, which in my opinion, I feel like a large portion of the charter school phenomenon, it harmed our community. So why would I allow you to get rid of education so my 14-year-old son can go work in your warehouse overnight or your 24-hour fast food spot? Now, for some folks, they may say, hey, at least they're bringing in money. But what about the child's education? Shouldn't that child have the right or the ability to be educated at the highest regards and compete on a global scale? They're dealing with children in India who know how to code by the third grade. They're dealing with kids out of China who are driven on mathematics and science. Flipping burgers and moving boxes, that doesn't seem like a way to make America great again. That sounds like you're easing your way up to get us back on that watermelon. And I've been saying that jokingly for years, but I sincerely believe it. They want us to return back to the watermelon. And we, as a people, we must speak out against that. We don't need them reversing the rights of women. We don't need them reversing the rights of minorities. And we certainly don't need minors being worked as adults because of a political miscalculation. With that being said, Sister Rashi, how you doing this morning?
I'm here with you, bro. Oh. All right, that was it. Did you see it?
I saw you for a second.
Did you see the hat come out from under the bridge?
I saw you for a second.
That's it. That's what you get. Okay,
I
so
saw
I'm not
you.
finna put on all that makeup and pull my hair back and push the skin back, rub the cream under my eyes, put the polish on my teeth, lips. Let me tell you what it takes for a woman to get on that camera and not be looking like a piece of ran over roadkill. You know what? I'm so glad you started with education because now I'm getting pressure. You know, I'm a teacher, Brother Barry, right?
Yep.
Sixth grade science. I had 65 children under my control, under my supervision. Let me say that better. And hey, how about this? I started out with 81, but the standards of my school have changed. It went from East Side High to what somebody could deal with. But when I started the school, it was 100% waiting for Joe Clark. Okay,
Right.
kids was kicking each other down the steps. People were stealing out of classrooms. Mayhem, right?
Yep.
So when my boss hired me, she was like, Johnson, I just need you to know I picked you specifically because I know who you are. It was somewhat of an insult, actually, Brother Barry, because I know how I am.
Right.
If it ain't right,
Right.
Johnson gonna say something like it's literally with it. I cannot not. When I'm not right, I say something. That's how bad it is. When I'm fucking up, I
Mhm.
tell.
Right.
So when you fucking up, I tell and I point, right?
Right. You gonna tell it for real then.
Baby,
Definitely.
I tells. So when I came in, I would had I looked at a system that I'm in the district. Like I have been in virtually we're a district of 33 schools. I've been in 25 of them as a floating substitute.
Right.
So if anybody's going to get an assessment of a district, it's someone who's not entrenched in one class for 20 years, but someone who has floated the district.
Right.
Brother, the school I got to was playing so bad. They was throwing stuff over the steps. You hear me?
Mm.
They was beating each other up on the bus stops. Before the bus could even get them, they was mollywhopping each other.
Mm.
All right. So she came in. She's like, she damn near did a she did a Joe Clark. I can't even explain it. She said, "Look, whatever you see, fix it. No, don't call me to fix it. I bestow upon you, the instructor, some of my administrative power in order to get it fixed in the moment. Because if we keep seeing the infractions and then sending them to administration, the administration becomes inundated with child behavior and no learning still happens.
Mm.
They figured it out. Them
Mm.
child that we was trying to not leave behind, they figured it out, Brother Barry. They said if I tell the teacher shut the fuck up talking to me, right? Which they do to me often, but I'm immune to it now. When they tell the teacher shut the fuck not shut up or leave me alone, shut the fuck up talking to me. I'm recording verbatim, by the way. What am I gonna do? Why I never in all my days. And then I clutch my pearls. And then I go and I write the referral. And then I send them to the office. And guess what? All that leaves them behind. Addressing a child's behavior leaves them behind.
Mm.
So what they was trying to tell us was you're gonna have to decide what is leave behind behavior or not. And their blanket disrespect for the actual process of education is not enough.
Mm.
All right, cool, 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 cool. Cause a little 12-year-old ain't the first one to call me a bitch.
Mm.
I have to say, I'm seasoned in that regard. Okay, but here's the problem. I'm supposed to now create an alternative learning plan for him, so that he don't have to keep calling me a bitch. I get his send his packet home, or I send him to another teacher who's the restore. Look, it ain't no more ISS in KC. They're called restorative justice instructors.
Mm.
So I'm to create an alternative learning plan, send him to restorative justice, hope she can get him to do the work, and then grade it afterwards. Come on, Barry.
Mm.
So what I'm saying is, while you have these lofty ideas about what education is supposed to do and how it's going to do it, and it will if it works right, brother. We're dealing with a apathetic attitude amongst children that I don't think I've seen it to this degree before.
Hmm.
I've seen one or two dope boys who can get their money on the street be like, fuck school, right? And I've seen the daughters of women who've had a lot of kids who get to stay home and help mom care for the kids. They don't care about school.
Hmm.
But hey, let me tell you who I ain't never thought I was gonna have to pull. My foreign nationals. Hey, you swam here, you boated here, you flew here, they get you here through the Coyote Caravan, all that. You here. They don't care about school.
Hmm.
That's new. Barry, that's new.
But Rashi, I would wonder why anybody would be shocked about people not caring about education when you got a president like Trump, who clearly is not the most educated in politics. And look, he made it as president. He's
And
not.
him and Bush, right?
Well, no, I because Bush, I could say for the most part with Bush was a governor before he became president. So he at least was a politician. Donald Trump is not a politician. He is a reflection of the
But
reality
he,
TV shows.
but Barry,
No, hear me out, sister. Because the reality TV shows, this is what we're living with in this administration. He is a reality TV show manifestation. He came from The Apprentice. On these reality TV shows, what do they have to do to be wealthy and famous? What's the criteria, Sister Rashi?
well, you have to have something to offer for one.
Like,
You
I mean,
can't
no,
just
no,
be a
but,
you
but what,
you can't
but
just
what,
be white, bruh. Come on.
but what do you have to offer education wise? What does your degree has to be in? What do you have to be rooted in? I mean, because if I think about the housewives of Atlanta, all you have to do is be able to have good clapbacks, be willing to fight, and insult people.
And look pretty.
Okay, look pretty. Okay. So he's coming off as Dirty Harry, Charles Bronson, right? This Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson like character. Make my day, right? Sister Elise Nelson said after desegregation of schools, ISS and expelling students was an extension of segregation and systematic racist agenda. That's what Sister Elise Nelson said in the chat. I
Well,
agree
well,
with
tell
that.
Miss Nelson she ain't been standing in front of 25, 12 graders talking about shut up, bitch.
Good morning, Brother Rodney. What's your point on this? And I know what you're saying
You
about
know
the
what?
go ahead.
That Clint Eastwood Charles Bronson reference is so tight for I'm still chewing on that, brother. I'm chewing on that, but because that's how he talked though. If you don't fix it, I'll be there. If you don't fix it, I'm coming.
But
By the time I get in the seat, if y'all don't got it right, I'm finna get it right. That's the deepest commentary I've heard in a while about his persona. Like everybody call him stupid and greedy, but don't nobody bring it to that early. I, I'm gonna vigilante. I'm gonna get America right if nobody else does type.
right.
You got me chewing on that, brother.
But Sister Rashi, the students that you're talking about, don't they sound like the kids from South Park? Don't they sound like Riley from the Boondocks? Don't they sound like the entertainment? I mean, like what we're seeing played out in front of our eyes is our entertainment being brought into real life. And it's crazy because when black men do it, it becomes criminal, right? When black men start living out the fantasies of these rap songs that they're rapping about, and you start flying women out, now that's called sex trafficking. If you fly a woman from New York to California to have sex and you put some money in her purse, that means that you have just did sex trafficking and you can go to jail for that. If you talk about all the guns and the drugs that you use or sell, you can go to jail for that. And while it's admired and people do it because of the likes, I'm just saying, y'all, the personas, it is a persona thing. So I see it in the students. How about you, Rodney? What do you see down there from the young people that you come across?
If I was predicting the future from some of the young people I see really just starting out school, I would probably predict a very bleak future because of the lack of discipline, the lack of desire, the even the raw material that the educators are starting out with. I feel sorry for teachers. And even though there's plenty of bright spots, there's so much that needs to be done for the average child
Right.
that it looks pretty bleak. And when I hear people's response, professionals, it all comes down to, hey, well, the home is the first level of education. And
Come on.
I'm I'm the second
Third.
level.
Come.
And but what I'm getting is I'm not getting that level. I'm getting that I am the first level. So they missed out on a whole level. Now, me as a teacher, I have this lump of unformed clay that should have some form to it, that I'm trying to give form to it, while I have a few others who do have form that are being held back because of the time that I have to spend forming these others. I mean, that's what I see. And I see no plan to make it better. And what I see Cheeto Mussolini doing is setting it up to make it worse, setting it up so that the future electorate is even more ignorant than the current electorate, which is saying a lot.
Unformed clay.
And
Unformed clay. Dang, both of y'all. Listen, I'm finna just be quiet and let y'all talk. Because between the vigilante ideology of the president and the primary teacher being the classroom teacher now and not the parent, using unformed clay, y'all got me over here, and I might as well be looking at my lessons like I queue up on YouTube. Come on, brothers. Come on. They are unformed. They're not just unformed academically, Brother Rodney.
Especially.
They don't have home training. They don't actually, they're home, Brother Barry, home training. Home training.
yeah,
We have to address it. We have to address what the home is supposed to do before they send their product. The home sends its product out into the world, whatever it's the man, woman, or the child.
mm,
The woman is supposed to train her husband, to be steadfast in his earning capabilities.
yeah,
In fact, they're supposed to train each other on that. I'm sorry, that's a mutual thing now, since they both got to go back and go get a job. They're supposed to train each other on the love, not to be out there searching and looking. They're also together supposed to have one unified plan for the product, the children that they create, and that child is supposed to be comforted in the knowledge that it ain't no difference between both. If it ain't her mama and daddy, right? It's two people. So if something happened to that one, there's at least one other person who understands what is supposed to happen to and with me, and I can rely on it. It's gone. It's gone. And the children recognize it. And they feel like they out here on their own. And they have to figure it out for them. And they do, for real, have to figure it out for themselves. So what do I tell them, Brother Barry?
so I think you tell them the first thing I would say as an educator, and mind you, let me go back. I taught kindergarten. I taught kindergarten, second grade, fourth grade, and ninth grade. So, with that being said, my kindergarten students,
Wait. I'm sorry, Brother Barry. Say what grades you taught again.
so I started off in second grade, then it went to kindergarten. Then the school, they couldn't figure out why my kindergarten class was so good, but they were struggling with the fourth graders, and so they moved me to the fourth grade room. Then that school got defunct. I ended up becoming a dean of students, and then after that school got defunct, I went over to a high school, and I was uh, teaching ninth graders. So, with that being said, and I want to make sure I make this clear, because up until ninth grade in elementary, because so many of the children that I dealt with possibly did not have fathers inside of the home, and even the ones that did have fathers and I got along quite well. It was just understanding that, Sister Rashi, that I wanted my scholars to be exceptional. And whatever your shortcomings were, I remember having to tell a young man, because they had him in a lower reading group in second grade, and I do one-on-one with him, and I'm like, this kid can read. But his problem was his emotions. He couldn't control his emotions, and he could easily be triggered. And he'd get to fighting and fussing. And so I would just tell him he's in his feelings. And me telling him he's in his feelings, he started checking himself and start self-regulating, because he was still competitive, Rodney and Rashi. He wanted to be in the top reading class in second grade. And he could read. He just needed someone to come and reassure him and say, nah, man, you got this. All you got to do is regulate how you feeling. Why are you crying? What are you crying about? Now, I know it could have been things going on at home. I know there could have been things going on chemically just as a young boy, right? Maybe not getting sleep, maybe up at night playing around with his siblings. Could have been a lot of things. But when you come into a classroom, when I went into a classroom, and maybe because my mother worked in the office, and even though my mother wasn't educated, she worked in the school office. My mom told me when I went to school, the teacher was my parent up until I got back home. And so I didn't have the wiggle room to disrespect no teacher, whether they were black or white, because my mother put emphasis on me that, hey, you gonna mind these teachers like you mind me. And if there's an issue with what the teacher's telling you, you come tell me and I'll deal with it. But if they come tell me something about you, if I find out that it's true, then I'm going to deal with you. And I don't see that a lot in schools, Sister Rashi. I don't see the desire of my mother, who did not have a college degree, who didn't have a high school diploma, but wanted us to have one, that wanted us to have college degrees, who pushed us. I don't see that from parents. And I'm not, and I don't want to say to like knock these families, because I feel like we do a lot of that. But I don't think, and remember, this conversation started with the idea of them taking 14-year-olds and having them work labor and overnight. When we openly say that we don't value education, and I'm going back to this conversation of how the algorithms work, how these people govern. Well, if y'all don't care about y'all youth and y'all don't want to deal with the youth, well, y'all love money, right? Well, let's let these kids go ahead and work. And when we let these kids go ahead and work, we can pay them pennies on the dollar like we were doing the immigrants. And now your kids are now working. And if you think you can't tell them nothing now, imagine a 14-year-old kid that's bringing money into the household. Because we always teach, we always teach cash is king. Now the kid is working, and now you really gonna be disconnected from your child. And as I said on my show this morning, as much as the Republicans kept talking to us about transgender this, transgender that, queer this, queer that, and they're fearful of, they're also pedophiles. And it's the reason why they want to adult your kids, because that's the excuse that they can use to sleep with your 14-year-old daughter. Nobody's thinking about that, because only thing that we think about is what they tell us to think about. But you better see the other side of the game in the next move. If I can adult your kid to work overnight, I can also adult your kid to have sex at a younger age, which will stop them from getting into these pedophilia scandals that they're always getting enwrapped in. Sister Rashi.
Whoa, that was a connection I was not prepared to make, brother. I mean, it's 100% A plus B is C. But I just did not. I understood the adultification of children for purposes of explaining why you had to shoot Trayvon down, in the back of the apartment complex, or you got to shoot Mike Brown, or you got to shoot, these children, why you got to roll Freddie Gray in the back of the truck. I thought that because they were considered adult-like people, that's what made. But I never considered ever that working a child puts them in a realm where they almost become pseudo adults, and in that reality, you can treat them, you can treat them as if they were adults. And so since then, you can fuck them, you can cheat them, you can do whatever you want with them because they're not protected anymore. They're pseudo adults. And here's my problem. If you listen to the commentary of the child, that's what they want. They don't want to be a little kid no more. They want to be the persona that they're trying to adopt, for at least in my grade, is that of a pseudo adult. Now, I am dealing with 11 and 12-year-olds and one 13-year-old who play too much. So, uh, yes, I'm a think about that. When you work a person, yes, when you put them in the realm of having money, and when you said imagine that, I thought about all them little teenage boys who used to sell dope back in the day, and they daddy would what do you tell your son if he got more money in his pocket than you do from doing illegal? Or you have to put him out because you can't make him come in and do the dishes. Son, put that crack pack down and come do these dishes. He'll smack the shit out of you if you let him. So yeah, the power, the parent or the money. You can be a parent with some broke ass kids, but if you empower your children with enough money to make them feel like they can be autonomous, you will lose control over them children. But in
But
my opinion, my kids is broke and the parents still don't have no control. The
Sister
kids is
Rashi,
broke, the parents is broke, and everybody mad.
Sister Rashi, I want you to really look at the idea of, and don't put it between the parent and the child. Look at the wealthy people and what they can do to these kids now. And that's the main thing. And Sister Elise Nelson commented again. She said, the socioeconomic barriers is a huge detriment of the breaks of today's family values and influence on kids. Having to work multiple jobs out of the home creates the environment for children to learn from other sources such as social media, TV programs, etc. The disrespect for authority in all forms is shown on those platforms as a subject of entertainment. I absolutely feel for the teachers because they are expected to teach and also make up for parental deficiencies. And
And
I
you
agree.
bet not call them. You bet not call them. I'm
There's that
actually under
unformed
review
clay
right
again.
now, fellas. I'm
You said,
under review right now for calling parents. My principal wants to have a meeting with me. I've received several complaints from parents
hmm,
for contacting them
yeah.
about the disturbing behavior of their child.
You know why, Rashi? Because you're supposed to be just a daycare. And that's the other side of pushing it back on just the American populace, right? They're not sending their children to be educated anymore. They're sending their children there so someone else can occupy the kids' time while they get their dollars to pay rent and things of that nature. So that's the struggle that we're having a lot in our community. Uh, my brother Travis Sankofa said, "Tell the sister to check out the book Original Sin: The Miseducation of Black and Native Children and the Construction of American Racism by Eve L. Ewing." And I'll share that with you, Sister Rashi. Also,
I got access to it on the other platform. I do real radio on all streams.
okay, all right, certainly. And so and that's where I look at it at too. And I'll say this again: the beauty about our people that we don't give our ancestors credit for was they wanted better for the next generation. If your parent only had a sixth grade education, they wanted you to have a 12th grade education. A parent that had a 12th grade education wanted you to have the college degree. I think that we're in a space now where parents are not pushing the children forward. And I feel like that's where we're struggling. I think the struggle starts when we're not pushing our children forward. We're looking at what we don't have. And then because of and I think a lot of it was like the data too. Oh, I don't got it, so they ain't gonna have it. No, I ain't got it. You know, this is my conversations with my sons. Hey, you see what I'm struggling with? If you don't want to struggle with this, and this, you got to make a better decision than I make. You need to be better than me. There's no, you gonna do what I do. You got to be better than me. Period. Your child should be better than you. And shout out to my brother Travis Sankofa, because he asked me a question, I want to say about 15 years ago. And he said, do you feel like Rondé is better than you? Yeah, Rondé is my oldest son. Or will be better off than you? And I gave him an answer, a typical, not really thinking about the question answer. And I'm like, hell no, he ain't better. You know, I mean, you know, you go as a father, you throw that ego in. But then later on that night, I got to thinking about the question, and I said, oh, I get where he's going. He was saying, you know, am I setting my son up to be in a position to be better off than I am? And I feel like that's what we have to do. But that's more of a cultural thing. I think we lost that on the cultural mores. Brother Rodney, what do you think about that?
Actually, I was thinking about something that one of the listeners typed in, and it was talking about the socioeconomics and how that predestines our children. And I just wanted to sort of dive into that. And is it that the socioeconomics predestine our children, or is it something that we do to children who come from those socioeconomics that makes, instead of it being predestined, so to speak, it's more like manifest destiny?
Yeah.
And I hear that a lot, that if children come from this socioeconomic, this is the level that they are and the level that they're expected to go. And so maybe originally that was a piece of data that was an indicator, but now it seems that that piece of data is causation. And I don't know if, I feel like that is not correct. Because a child comes from that does not mean they cannot. It's because a child comes from that, we treat them like they cannot. Therefore, we set them up, going back to your point, we set them up for failure.
Yeah.
We predetermine their destiny.
Yes.
That is the problem. Because a child that comes from a bad socioeconomic situation is not less capable of learning. It doesn't mean that there's something different in their brain where they don't have the ability to grasp the same thing that the child comes from the highest socioeconomic strata. It just means that those children may have more challenges, and that if things are not done properly, that child may go down that route. And I think that is important to differentiate that, because if we don't, what we're saying is, instead of, it's bad enough to send a child into a burning house, which is a school, but we are the arsonists. Whereas as a minimum, we should be the firefighter. And so that's what I think is a huge delineation when we start talking about the impact of socioeconomics. It's not the socioeconomics, it's what is done with children who comes from those socioeconomics. Do we set them up to succeed, or do we set them up to fail? And I believe we as a society set them up to fail. But just like you did with your son, regardless of that socioeconomic, you instilled something in your son that gave your sons a leg up, and maybe what other children may not have. Because as you mentioned earlier, one of those things from people from that socioeconomic is a lower marriage rate. And the men may not, the biological father may not have as much influence and impact over their child as others. So I just think that that delineation of factors, is it causation or is it a piece of data? It's important that we understand that as it is and not make it the defining characteristic of our children.
All right, so I got two comments. I'm gonna bring Sister Rashi back in. The first is from Faded Freedom. Hotep, y'all, Democratic Party, Republican Party, we ain't invited to the party. That's one comment. And then Travis Sankofa said, our collective response to the social economic barriers are what determines our destiny. And Sister Rashi, with that, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's our responses, right? And you know, Rodney and I, we often talk about this when it comes to relationships. It's almost like we don't know us anymore. Like we know that we got grandparents and parents. Excuse me, I got a cold. That were not the most highly educated. But it does not mean, Sister Rashi, that they sent us to school with the license to cuss, fuss,
Ooh.
act our
Did you
behind,
say cuss?
cuss or fuss.
Ooh.
Cuss or fuss, because you know, dang is too close to damn, right?
Man, cuz.
Right?
Man,
Dang is too close to damn.
I
there's a
know what would
vape.
have happened if my
These
mother.
children are vaping.
Ooh,
They're touching each other. They're stealing. They're destroying government property. These people are taking Sharpies and drawing prison tattoos on each other. These girls, they're ripping each other's weave out in the cafeteria. They're calling each other all kind of names on social media
Sister
sites.
Rossi, they're ripping each other's what?
Weave,
Oh, weave. I'm sorry.
braids and weave out. Okay?
Gotcha.
They're pounding each other's heads on the cafeteria table. And I'm talking to these children like, okay, let me, they got a place for you. Here in Kansas City, we got a brand new municipal, not the federal level, we got a state level prison being built within walking distance, always, of course, within the black community. And so uh, I told them, you know, they got a studio apartment waiting on people like you. They got a studio, two-piece person, one room, one bathroom, studio apartment waiting. The money is waiting. They know you coming because of this. This right here, this inability to deal with, but you can't deal with trauma when it's happening to you in real time. And that's my burden. You want it's not who's socioeconomic mean there's some money there, money within the society for improvement, I guess for a therapist or for some fucking idea. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it because when black people was uh broke, they went to church and they got educated in one room and 10 pews and one chalk. It ain't even a chalkboard. They was drawing the shit on with black people went from abject nothing to pushing 33% understanding with the money left from the soldiers and whatnot who signed their name with an X. So when we talking about what the black mind can do, I'm a Asa Hilliard, I'm a Amos Wilson, Asa Hilliard, Barbara Sizemore, Marva uh, uh,
Collins.
Collins. I have steeped my feet in the mantra that hell, go to the deepest rural of Africa, Brother Barry, and there is no socio-economic except for that one dude who's got the great dude's name, right? But when the children have to be educated, it's with rocks in the mud, it's with a fucking stick carved on the wall. I've seen it. Not all of it, but they do travel to get education. But I'm telling you, you don't take money to educate a child. It takes somebody who already knew, right? Somebody who already knew, who tried, and he
Yeah.
tell them, when I tried it, it didn't work like that. And now we do it like everybody do like this, and that's how it worked, right? When you start trying to tell black people it take money to learn, it give them I feel like it's real. It's not fake. It's real. You got to have good text. You got to have a good, decent environment. You
Yeah.
got to have some shit right. We asking for $500 million in Kansas City. The Kansas City School District is now asking for a new bond for $500 million, for from the city, right? So that we can one stop the asbestos from leaking on the children's head, and possibly get a new facility to welcome all these foreign nationals, because we apparently are what they call them, brother Barry, a sanctuary.
Sanctuary City.
We're a sanctuary city. And so come one, come all up here. Whatever money associated with that is come one, come all. And so since you're doing that and you dumping the children and the offspring of that come one, come all in the classroom, we are asking for, I mean, it's a legit ask, right, fellas?
I mean, it is a legit ask, but let me say this though. I think here's the thing. In all the stops that I've been in, I would say that the schools were underfunded. And the reason why I would say that the schools were underfunded, based off of what I saw, is that the conditions that the children do come in, they do need other professionals inside of the building to help them with some of the chemical barriers that they're having based off of what they had to suffer inside of the community, inside of the womb as well. Sister Elise Nelson said the socioeconomic effect is more about absence of parental control and influence and not necessarily about poverty. She says she agrees that we should not pigeonhole or shuffle kids into a predestined category. And white folks are doing that to us already. They came up with slicker ways to do it. It's like when like when that test that they would give you and say, based off of somebody else's perceived notion about your personality and your aptitude, this is the line of profession that you should go into. And they would always say that you should become a sanitation worker, or you should become a person that's working on the assembly line versus a doctor or lawyer. They've already said that. Now, Faded Freedom stated, we American freedmen, Negroes are being assimilated. We are becoming more Anglo-Saxon, Negropeans than African. So I would say this much. I think that part of the problem that we have is that we're hard on each other in the wrong places. And we have to get tough in the right places. And the things that we can't blame us for, we got to let white folks own what they effed up. And we have to stop blaming us, because I've been to schools where white people put money into the schools. And when they put money into schools, man, there's some real fine places of education. And you know what? They're not beating them over the head with math and science. I know that they sell us the STEM, but these kids are learning literature. These kids are learning how to self-maintain. Hell, they even got some yoga classes and some meditation and things where they get free periods, because they understand that you have to process the lesson plan. And they give their children that space, right? Travis Sankofa said, the Lord is my witness. The devil don't need an advocate. Are we asking what we are doing to reshape the way our children are being prepared for the world that is about to ascend upon them? Those of us born in the 1900s can recall how the later part of that century felt. We are a quarter of a century into this one. We can't continue to do school and things the way they were designed to be done to control the masses.
All right,
School give children tests and then direct down the path that takes them away. And so I agree with that. I definitely agree with Travis Sankofa
brother
on that.
Rodney, I want to ask a question, please. Do you think that the trauma, okay, let's put socioeconomics on the table, okay? Is the problem of having, like the lady said, both your parents or anybody who can control you working, substandard food, community with crime, stuff, does it actually cause those things in combination, because they never are really alone, a person to decide that they don't want to learn. They don't want to get information. They don't want to assimilate. I'm trying to, you said you wanted to pick at it, right? I'm trying to really pick at this thing. I'm a human, and the situation with my mother is, in order to keep us housed, she has to work hours that are not whatever the best hours are. Are we agreeing the best hours are 9 to 5, or 8 to 4, or 7 to 3, or 6 to 2, whatever that is for that household, right? And then when I'm come home, I'm home. I'm a latchkey. Oh, let me pull out my old 80s. He said the 1900s. This is a 1900s term. I'm a latchkey kid, right? All right. I come home. I got to make my own little snack or whatever. Got you. Got you. And now I get a choice, Brother Rodney. I can do my homework because the lady sent me with the work to help me understand these concepts, the lesson plan, to have the time. The time, Brother Barry, you was talking about earlier with the
Mhm.
plan, the learning plan, right?
Yeah.
And I can do that, or what was it, Brother Barry, that you did instead of the homework? What was it, Brother Rodney, that you did instead of the integration of your education at that time when you were young, when you were supposed to be fortifying your brain on a standard or a concept or an idea that Mrs. Applebottom or Miss Jenkins or whatever her name is told you was integral to you understanding the world? And you was like, yes, 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 yes. And you went home either to your mama or nobody. I know how it is, brothers. And you did.
So, Sister Rashi, obviously, my 1900s upbringing was a little earlier than yours, and I think things were different, but there is a similarity that we haven't touched on, because I lived on the farm with my grandmother in the very rural South, the Jim Crow South. But I also, I'm from Brooklyn, from Bed-Stuy, and I was a latchkey child in Bed-Stuy because my mother worked a graveyard shift. So I identify with everything that you said, but the difference with me though is I thought you just gave a false choice, to be honest. Because me as a child then, I didn't have the choice of not doing my homework when I got home, whether my mother was there or not. Because my mother told me that when I came home from school, I would fix myself something to eat, I'd wash my hands. I had to do that. I'd fix myself something to eat that she might have set aside either fully or partially for me, something that didn't require the stove. And then I was supposed to change out of my school clothes. And then I was supposed to do my homework. And then once I did my homework, then once, you know, we got television because we didn't have electricity in the South. In New York, we had it. So it just depended on where I was. But once I finished my homework, then I could watch TV.
Hmm.
And then if the neighbor would come over, then I could go outside to play. And that's a structure that I lived by. There wasn't even a question of not doing it. That was not up here. What was up here was I come home directly from school, I wash my hands, I take off my school clothes, fix myself something to eat, and then after I get something to eat and drink, I sat down and did my homework. That was it. That was what I was told
And
to
what,
do.
and what part of the South was that again? Somebody asked. Travis Sankofa asked, "What part of the South?"
The very southeast tip of North Carolina, right above the South Carolina line. Myrtle Beach would be the closest city, even though that was in South Carolina.
No, what was the name of the city or the town?
Well, it wasn't a city and it wasn't a town. It was
Wow.
actually a village,
Oh wow.
and it was called, it was called Supply, is what it was called. But
Supply.
it was very small. It was so the population was less than 100, and I think everybody in that village was related to me, I believe, except for one family. So when I was in North Carolina, and there was a different dynamic in Carolina than it was in Brooklyn, but there was a lot of similarities too, because there was still um, parental involvement with me in that area. But there was, do you guys remember Dr. Robert L. Greene? He wrote the book about great expectations in education, and
Mhm.
one of the
No.
studies they cite is how if you take a child who's doing well and put them in a situation and say that they're not doing well, and then you do reverse, right? So you take a child that's doing well and tell them that they're not doing well. You take a child that's not doing well and tell them that they're doing well. And you continue to give them that positive reinforcement. And then you see the dynamics flip. The child that wasn't doing well suddenly is doing better. The child that was doing well is suddenly not doing as good. And he
Right.
says it's expectations. So maybe in a nutshell, that's what I can say. It was the expectation of my grandmother in the South, and she also had the switch outside too, but it was my grandmother's expectations in the South. And my grandmother's expectations in the South was, don't embarrass this family. You representing the family, and we're counting on you so that you can do more than we did because we're giving you more education. In New York, it was, you had that too, but you also had, and this was a key factor, this was huge, and this was in most of the people that I knew, is you can do it. You can, that the simple statement of, Rod, you can do it. You can do it, Rod. So I did not feel any intellectual limitation on my ability as a, and then I go back to Dr. Robert L. Greene, and I go back to the SHOT report, something more recent. And the SHOT report says that if you take a child from the worst socioeconomics and you put that child in the highest socioeconomics and in an environment where it's 20%, less than 20% of African Americans in that school or in that district, and that same child will perform on par or superior than the other children. They also identified that Black children starting out academically, because then it's like, what's the attitude of learning? That Black children actually started out superior than their white counterparts. So it's, once a child goes to school, that it used to be that they were told that they were less than, that over time that kicked in. But for children in my day, on average, we were told that we could, and it was also from the people in the South, we have an expectation that you will be a benefit to the family. Therefore,
The
you
family.
must
Come on.
do
The
better.
family. The
And that,
family.
those things being
Yeah.
instilled in me made the difference, because when they were trying
The
to beat me
family.
down in school, because they tried to
Brother,
tell me that I would never, I had a teacher tell me I would never amount to anything.
Houses.
That's how
Brother
they
Bear.
treated us if you were
Brother
Black.
Bear. Brother
And it
Bear.
was my mother telling me, oh no, Rod, you can do anything. That
Mm.
superseded all of the negative stuff I got from the teachers.
Mm.
Brother Barry, you got home
Yes, ma'am.
from school. You got home from school. What happened?
Well, I forgot all about it until Rodney brought it up. I thought about it. I was like, yeah, you did have to take your school clothes off. Hey, you got a snack, and I always had either my mother or my stepfather at home. So it was always a two-parent household for me. So it wasn't like you could just get away with doing nothing. And even on the times where I got old enough to start babysitting my brothers, uh, my stepfather, my mother would be home shortly afterwards. They might have got off for work at 3:30. We might have been in the house for an hour by ourselves, just enough time to take off your school clothes, get you something to eat, do your chores, and then get on to your homework. And so that's typically what it was. But you know, brother Sankofa said with Rodney. He said, right on, the ritual routines are vital and missing in many places of our culture. And it sounds like Brother Rodney has structure, healthy routines. And then he said, that's right, that's do or die, bed style.
You know it.
And then Sister Elise Nelson said, and Rashi, I want you to hop in after I read these off. She said, so there is a dichotomy as we as a community question when raising our kids between do we teach our kids the skills to play the game and the systemic path lay before us, or do we concentrate more on life skills based such as self-determination, self-love, self-regulation, and self-realization? And Travis Sankofa said, you're right. I side with it. It would be wise to do both. And Faded Freedom said, I submit that integration is part of the issue. As a child of the 60s, I was taught Black excellence. In the segregated schools I attended in my youth in Chicago, I was taught by teachers who looked like me, loved me, expected me to learn. They did not settle for anything less than my honest best. Now we send our children to be taught by people who don't love or fear them and sometimes have ill will toward them.
I was a part of a dissertation report by a brother named Linwood Tawheed out here in Kansas City. He's actually an economist, but he did his dissertation on the expectations of teachers,
Right.
and he showed statistical, because yeah, I get it. Don't make me use my white lady words, brother Barry. He showed what they call it, statistical significance, right, brother Barry?
Right.
Statistical significance difference
Yeah.
between the achievement of black children
Yeah.
under both white and black instructors
Uh,
based on what he quantified as expectation.
yeah. Okay.
All right? What do you expect? Whether it's right or not, what do you still expect?
Yeah.
And by the way, I need to add before I push forward my afternoon ritual. I'm also a latchkey kid with a sister,
Right.
and I had to walk around the corner, get my little brother from daycare. So I, as the oldest sibling, had to then go into the kitchen, cook the meal. It was my time 3 times a week. And so uh, all that in an addicted family household, okay? Where
Yeah.
things were happening all kind of mid times of the night, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
there was noise and music always playing. And so however, I'm also, undiagnosed. It's something people have to say. People always tell me it's something up with you. So it's something intrinsically driven in me not to be illiterate. And people, I'm not the kind of person to say I'm smart, but I can tell you this: I am intuitive. I can grasp the fundamental idea of something very quickly, and so I never felt compelled to sit there and do the work because I understood why they were giving me the work. And I had looked at the work and did the test and passed, and I felt like the homework was a boredom thing. Okay, this is what I'm trying to explain to you. There's people who have a ritualistic structure on what to do next. And then there are children who are trying to figure it out amongst themselves because there is no structure, right? And
Uh,
I have to say that while we weren't out in the street, most of the time, there was never someone saying, "Okay, now where's your homework?" I don't recall that day. And so, but there was someone saying, "What have you done? Did they hand you some work? Did you do it?" That's the clue. And if I say yeah, it is what it is. Or if they ask, so
right.
that's structured listness. That's
Yeah.
structured listness. And I just wanted to add that to the old school
Yeah.
structure of Mr. Rodney, the residuals of what you were dealing with the stepfather, a different type of family, but still the structure remained. And then mine is one of uh, actual one stepfather for a short time, but for the most part, a single mother household who worked and then played, so it was a lot of self guidance
Yeah.
and if that and in that help with the younger siblings.
Yeah.
So even if I wanted to be someone who did a whole bunch of homework, it would have been when I was reading my romance novels in the middle of the night. Anyway, so uh, the idea is here is right. The
Yeah.
idea here that that the person just asked, right, is whether or not this structure really matters. And I'm gonna tell you, I got a college degree. You got a college degree, uh, Barry?
No.
You got a college degree, Brother Rodney?
I am an educated man of letters.
And so, how important is that structure? It's going to depend on the intrinsic desire of the individual. So, y'all right. Build the intrinsic that value. No, don't put it all on life skills. No, don't put it all on the letters. Figure out how to make them letters enhance the life skills. You're going to have to learn life. It's coming. Life's coming, Brother Barry. But do you have to go out and get a college degree? You just said no. And you are a man of progress, I call them. You have found your place in the struggle and you are making strides to make a difference, right or wrong. Brother Barry has found, now, Brother Roddy has found three different struggles to join. Shit. And he's pushing interaction between African Americans within an urban environment. He's pushing military. He got some secrets in there he ain't told. Brother Rodney got them secrets. And if they come for him, he
And
just
I don't use Signal Gate when it's time to discuss them. Just put it down.
baby. Okay, he know better than to log on to the damn internet and say, "Hey y'all, did y'all hear about the?" He know better because he know he was a man who understood his position in the development of this country. Also, he's a biblical man out there feeding the damn people like the Bible
Can I,
said,
can I push
the
back?
least with the least of these. So
Can
listen, I'm almost done. Hold up. Does the life skills matter? Yes. Do the letters of the literate, do climbing the hierarchy of a education or a business matter? Yes. But what's real is this. It's all life skills. So them letters, all that college education is supposed to grease your life skills track. If you don't want it, all you signing up for instead of a grease track is the broken glass and shit scraping your ass. Cause you finna be rough life. It's rough when you illiterate, Brother Barry.
I agree, but I think that part of our problem, and I'm gonna quote Don King for a second.
Oh shucks.
When Don King was asked about his issues with Mike Tyson, he said that Mike Tyson didn't know he had a problem with Don until somebody told him he had a problem with Don, insinuating that there was really no problem. And I would say with our community sometimes, the over inundation of information and sometimes not being able to tell our people how to apply the information that they're receiving properly is part of the problem. You can hop online or you can read a book and you can get information, but if you don't know how to apply that information to your day-to-day life so that you can have a better outcome or to be aware of pitfalls that you should avoid, it almost become as damaging as you not never knowing. And I feel like sometimes we put ourselves in a position because of the information that we get, to Elisa's point and to Rodney's point and to Travis' point, that sometimes the information almost makes us stop in our tracks versus keep going. You do need life skills. You do need the degrees, but you also have to have the aptitude of your position in this country. And I feel like where I see our people struggle the hardest with, even if they got the six-figure salary, even if they got the letters behind their names, when they don't know who they are, you can go so far. But when you get your wake-up call, as Paul Mooney used to call it, then your psyche starts to crumble. Those of us who understand who we are and don't allow that to bog us down. I mean, knowledge itself is not meant to have you fearful of going out and succeeding in this society. It's meant so when you're succeeding through this society, you know which blade to cut, you know where to cut and how to cut. And it gives you that impact when Rodney talks about our children already having an advantage. Part of that is that love, and then also the awareness of how you fit into this society. Oh, I'm in this classroom, and I know it's only 2 other black folks in here with me, and these white folks think they smarter. I'm showing up every day to bust their ass. Every day. This is a
On
competitive
head. I call it
thing.
yarmulke status. Give
But if
it to them. Come
you
on.
teach me that we're all the same, then you're gonna dull down that competitive nature that I have. You're gonna dull that down. When you give me data and statistics based off of your perceived notion, explanation of what's going on in my household, or giving me an excuse, a convenient excuse, as Dr. King would say, to sit down, then people go sit down. Your single parent household does not give you the ability to quit on your community. Your mental health diagnosis does not give you an excuse to put on a ski mask, get a gun, and rob the old lady down the block. Having several children by several baby daddies do not give you the excuse to say that you're not going to pour hope and dreams into those children. You made bad mistakes. So what? Nurture your children if you can, and if you can't, put your children in a position where you surround them with community that can help you nurture those children. That's what we're missing. And every time we have these conversations, what I always think about when I think about white communities is, well, white folks who do succeed typically are tapped into a network of people who've already succeeded. Black folks who do succeed typically are tapped into a network with black folks or others who have already succeeded. That is the makeup of this country. And what I see from our children when I was in the classroom, what I see parents who are not pushing them forward. And I feel like that's the dialogue that we should have. It's, do you believe in your babies? And what type of belief do you have? Right? Because if all you want to do is, if the only belief you have is my son is going to be great if he's in the NBA, the NFL, or a rapper, a singer, or an actor, then by the numbers, you're eliminating the success of your child or the probability of success for your child.
Brother Barry, can I chime in on that?
Yes, sir.
Because you just did a bell ringer for me. And my mother, remember I said that she told me I could do it?
Yes.
I said, you could do it, Rod. And what you just hit on is what the seeds that we implant in our youth, regardless of socioeconomics and all of that stuff. It is the simple saying, or however it's said, that you can do it. And my grandmother, who raised me in the South, only had an 8th grade education.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was a high school dropout. But my brother was the first member of my family to get a master's degree, as well as go to an Ivy League university. But my mother, I never thought of my mother as a dropout. I never thought of her as being less than. I just saw her as my mother. And then when I was in, I think, middle school, junior high school, my mother had gotten her GED, and later she went to college, and she graduated college in 4 years while taking care of 3 boys, my sister, and holding down a full-time job. My point is, it was the simple concept that we could do it.
Yeah.
No matter what, everything else was to the side. We had the ability to do it, and there was an expectation for us to do it. And so when I hear people talk about, well, they're working multiple jobs, or they have this or they have that, I think you're absolutely right. Those can be factors, but we have made them more of excuses instead of factors, because I lived that life. I grew up in that life. And I can tell you, when my life almost, now there's impacts.
Yeah.
Because when my mother wasn't around, when I got older, not when I was younger, when I got older, because when I was younger, I was pretty much tied to whatever my mother or my grandmother said. Now, once I got older, had a little more freedom, then that's when I went astray, because that's when the game life got me.
Yeah.
But I give thanks to my mother and my grandmother, because it was still the seeds that they planted in me on what's right and wrong and how I should be and what I should do, that brought me out of that.
Yeah.
It was still them who saved me from that life, which has allowed me to live the life that I have now. And also, when I was in Bed-Stuy, there were white people who lived on my block.
Right.
Because now you're talking early 60s. There were
Right.
white people who lived on my block. When it snowed, I went down and helped the old white lady that was wearing black because she was a widow, because that's what they did back then, whose husband probably had transitioned 2-3 years ago. She was still wearing black. I still went down and helped her shovel her walk. We still did that. For the people who lived on the other end, we would still do that, or they would come down our way, because there was an expectation of me being a member of community as well. So I wasn't by myself, and I was still supposed to help others out. But and then maybe the keystone to this, there was a wino that hung out at the end of the block, a little further down than the white lady. It was where
Right.
the bodega was. And he would see me. And I attribute a lot of my success coming out of the gang life, for sure, to that wino. Because what he told me one day is, he said, you don't want to be like me. He said, you don't want to grow up and be like me. And I said, what do you mean? And he told me, he says, look at me. He says, look how I'm living. Is this how you want to live?
Right
You
on.
have an opportunity to do better, and
Yeah.
you should take that opportunity. Now, things were also a little different then too. If it looked like you had an opportunity for success, the gangs would kind of let you go.
Yeah.
And you got that second chance from the community. So I do understand that the dynamics in society have changed. But it was that wino with the things that my mother and grandmother had instilled in me. But when I did go left,
Yeah.
that wino's words, it was the wino, and it was some real OGs back in the day who pulled me to the side and said, man, we didn't have a choice. He said, but you have a choice. And for us, we need you to make it out. And, you mix all of that up. And that's what gave me what I needed to do to change. And there was some martial arts and philosophy and stuff that was a part of that mix. But the foundation of it was my mother, my grandmother, and the wino down at the end of the street, mixed in with some OGs. And I remember what they said. They said, look at us. He said, how many old guys do you see? And I said, only the two of you. And he said, there's a reason for that. He said, because the rest of them are in jail. They're 6 feet under. They're incapacitated among us, but they're stuck in the house. He said, and there's a few that's still out there. He said, because there's no future. And he says, and they were teaching Black power to me early. They said, we as Black people, our strength is in you. And if you don't change your life, then that means we don't have a future, and we want a future. Those things were powerful. And so a man of my age still remembering those people pulling me aside and telling me that. Sometimes I wonder, are we pulling our young people? First of all, are we instilling those types of values in them from the start? And then when they do maybe go left or right, is there somebody else out there to kind of pick them up and kind of dust them off and say, yeah, you made some mistakes, but you have an opportunity, and we expect you to do better. I don't know if that exists right now.
So Travis and Kofa said, let's keep moving the ball down the field, one generation to the next, one day at a time, one interaction at a time. forwards always. I know Sister Rashi wanted to do a segment, so I want to make sure that we pivot and we get it in. Sister Rashi, are you ready?
Because it's not a pivot. And I'm so glad that our show today was about education. It's so simpatico to what it is I would like to discuss with you. Now, today I would, March is, for now, until they take it away. March is Women's Month. I think they already took it away, but until they come and snatch it out of my hand, out of my cold dead. Anyway, until they come and actually take it away in my psyche, March is Women's Month, and so I wanted to definitely keep in the vein of education, especially of the youth, and talk about Sister Barbara. Excuse me, not sister, because I didn't know her personally, but Doctor. Okay, Doctor Barbara Sizemore. All right, Dr. Barbara Sizemore was an educator born out of Chicago in the 20s, in the late 20s. And uh, she was a part of that, if you can remember earlier when I was talking about Alton Maddox, Dr. Kendrick Clark, Asa Harriet, Isa Ivan Van Sertima. That's a clique. It's like a clique of people with the Jeffries, Rosalind and Leonard Jeffries. It's a clique of people, of thinkers, of scholars, actually, let me call it properly, who decided to put their feet and their love into the development of African and African American, more importantly, in the connection in the two. Anyway, so Barbara Sizemore was a member of that uh, cadre of people, and what she put her part of the struggle was education of the people, much like mine, much like yours, Brother Barry, in your early on years. Education of the people, just like you, Brother Rodney, when you do the gathering, right, and other facets of your teaching capacity. So Barbara Sizemore decided that she was going to first educate herself. And she did it very well. She was a woman who spoke multiple languages, including Latin. And so she had steeped herself in the classics so that she could educate people on what the standard is out there in the world and help develop that transfer, that bridge, Brother Barry, from what they were expecting of black people and what we were able to actually give. That's what I believe is part of her reason in educating herself that way. She was extremely intelligent. I'm talking about, high processing speed. And so, honestly, in the time that she grew up, brothers, there was not an educational system capable of handling her processing speed. Do you know what I mean by that, brother Rodney? Do you know what I mean by that, Brother Barry?
I do.
where where you they're expecting for you to be on one level at age blah blah blah, but you are, much like Martin Luther King and them, able to process on a speed so high that they don't know what to do with a black person who can think that sharply. And so that idea of climbing a European education system with a what I call a melanated mind that can push past the system they developed that fast, she ended up radicalizing herself. When you find yourself in a room, you said it earlier, Brother Barry, it's one or two of y'all, right? No, no, no. Was it you, Brother Rodney? It's one or two of y'all extremely bright, black people in a room. And you have to decide what you're going to do. Do you assimilate, or do you educate yourself so that you can empower your people to know what's going on in these smoke filled cigar rooms? All right. She radicalized herself on behalf of African Americans. Her first enactment of that radicalization was going into the classroom. Come on, y'all. Barry, you been in there. It ain't no it's you can't talk that shit till you go into there and see all them faces staring at you, right, Barry? See
I
all
know.
them young people who don't know nothing. and they asking you to transfer in them this knowledge. She did, but she did it back then in the way that y'all did back then, Brother Rodney. She infused it with Africana ideology because, after all, she was a member of that cadre, right? Remember the cadre, right? All right. So in that, they began to see her actual intrinsic value. When you in bed, you can do it, Rodney. You can do it. You can do it, Barry. You can do it. Come on into the mindsets of children in Chicago and Philadelphia, where she ends up becoming a superintendent. She climbs that ladder so quickly with the numbers you can generate from you can do it and showing them people who have done it. Imhotep, blah 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 blah. Come on, you know the list. You know the list. I ain't gonna even go there. So when you show children of a certain color, people who have already done it before them and make it part of their curriculum, it shows in the statistics. Statistics bring you power. The power allows you to climb the social ladder and hierarchy, and she becomes social superintendent so well that not just her educational, elementary educational, district work, she becomes someone that universities need to hire because they have gotten this poor product so long that they need someone who can move minds like that in the collegiate level. Would y'all say that's still a problem? Yes or no? Let me get that nod. Yes or no, that even in college, we getting people who cannot read. That's a current lawsuit being brokered in the United States, by the way. It's two. It's a woman and a man who said they got all the way there, Mr. Rodney, and they can't read. All right, so Barbara Sizemore tackled that. She did that tirelessly. And you can see her passion in several videos that are now being broadcast by on the internet, YouTube, by the Transatlantic Productions media program. If you literally put TAP or Transatlantic Productions, you will find a litany of videos from our elder visionaries where they discuss the actual problem. You don't have to wonder. They have it for you there. And so if you don't feel like that was too radicalized, there's something called the visionary product, the visionary project. If you type in the visionary project, and you type in Barbara Sizemore, you'll see a list of videos where she explains that thing that you talked about earlier, Brother Barry, the privatization of education. And it's coming. It's coming. And they're gonna send my son, if he ever has children, because I'm done. They're gonna send my daughter, because she got a 3-year old, right? Soon they're gonna send her a $10,000, you know, cash, not cash, but electronic transfer. And with that transfer, the Department of quote unquote education is going to expect my daughter to find a decent kindergarten or first grade school for my granddaughter, right? And the ones that she's going to have available to her at best are going to want $13,000, 14. So my daughter is going to be placed in the United States of America in a system where she's going to have to pay for my granddaughter to be properly educated. And if the better education she wants, the more she'll have to pay. And that project is part of Project 2025. So the ideas of Barbara Sizemore were not some ghost in the wind. What they were talking about is a reoccurring push from the Republican and conservative parties to put to look at to clock the money for real. I ain't trying to be funny. To clock the money that's going into education so that they put the onus of whether or not a child is properly educated back upon the parent, back upon the structure, back upon the previous You Can Do It Rodney Foundation to see if they are going to be able to render, Brother Barry, these robots, these fast food warehouse robots that they think they're going to be able to get. Barbara Sizemore fought against that so vehemently. And uh, guess what? She used it with Africana ideology. She infused it with the pyramid. She infused it with Imhotep. She infused it with, uh, uh, come on, Moses. Come on, help me. Harriet Tubman. Oh my God, how could I forget? She infused it with Frederick Douglass. And now they have pulled that. So if the way to the power for Black American children is the infusion of the ideology of what has happened before, has been refused and pushed out of the curriculum by law, how are we going to get our children back invested into the idea of academia? How are we going to get those numbers that they were able to get when they freed us in 1865, and then we showed up in the 1880s like, what had happened? Reconstruction? Let's get these laws popping, and they get them away. Okay, what's going to happen when we came back out of the 60s, ready to infuse the instruction with Black power again? It's happening again, brothers. And so, what Barbara Sizemore was talking about is of present sense, and we need to discuss it on real terms because our current political system is down with privatization. They're down with removal of any information that makes little white kids feel introspective. They're down with it. So, what do we do? What do you want me to? I'll say it better. I'm in the classroom, fellas. What would you have me do?
So, Sister Rashi, I actually don't really see much difference in it. I think one of the things that we have to do is get rid of falsehoods, and we tend to associate money with academic success and achievement. We also tend to associate the level of degrees or letters that our educators have. And it's been a while since I checked, but I know when we did the studies here in the fifth largest school district in the nation, which is where I reside, we found that, and then when we checked those, our study with studies that were done in other cities, we came up with the same conclusion. And that is, it is not your socioeconomics, it's not the level of education of your teachers, nor is it the level of technology in the classroom that determines a successful student. It's going back to basics. The number one indicator of a successful student, the number one predictor of a successful student is a child's home life. That's it. And those schools can do some things to mitigate that. It's like a net with really big holes in it. Is that yes, you will catch some, but the majority of the students will fall through that net. And I I thought how in the previous segment, which ties into this segment, is the basics of education is the same. If a child has to be able to read, they have to be literate. Um, they have to know some basic number facts. And they also have to have a desire. And then they have to have it reinforced at the home.
Mhm.
Those things haven't changed. And those are the foundations of learning. And some love wrapped into all of that is a great benefit too.
Yeah.
So here's an example. When I was in North Carolina with my grandmother, we didn't have any electricity. So at about, depending on what time of the year it was, your day ended early. And all we had was kerosene lanterns. And if you ever lived with kerosene lanterns, you know they don't give off a whole lot of light. And oftentimes it's more of a yellow hue than the bright light that we associate with today. And there was no libraries. I don't even know where a library, matter of fact, to this day, I don't know where a library was in my little village, right? So when I was taught to read, I was taught to read the newspaper and whatever books that were left around the house from the older kids and the previous generations. That's what I was taught to read. And I remember them helping me learn how to read those things and how much later in life that helped me. So I still say the same thing. The foundations of learning have not changed. But when we start putting the burden on, they don't learn because they don't have technology. They don't learn because they don't have enough money. You hear a lot of negatives on why we don't. And those are not the real factors on why we don't. And I think we have to stick on the things that really make a difference and let those other things be less of a factor in our adult minds, because then I believe that transfers to our children's minds.
Yeah, for me, I I just think I just feel like we have a conversation so much based off of what they're doing. And
Bless you.
thank you. I just feel like you know what? I'm not gonna say I feel. I know. I'm gonna get out of my feelings and tell you what I know. Tell you what I know. I know that I was in schools with people who had degrees that could not teach a child anything. And then I took a kindergarten classroom and I taught them algebra. I took my student who struggled at the beginning part of the year with identifying shapes, numbers, letters, and by encouraging her and saying she's the next president of the United States, she came back from winter break identifying shapes, numbers, being able to do addition and subtraction, because she knew she was coming back to an environment where she was going to be praised and loved. And by the way, she had leadership qualities in the classroom, very passionate about what she could not do, but had the will to want to do it. And we just gave her the encouragement. I've also seen children who are older who suffer with anxiety. And the anxiety was because of the environment that we tell our children in our community to stay in cities where they have to see their neighbors be murdered and houses being robbed. And our kids grow up in these environments sleeping on the floor because they don't want to get shot while they're in their bed at night. And while that impacts a lot of their abilities to sit still in classrooms, we still should push them to want to change the outcomes of the community. My whole point of saying all of this is we got to stop buying into what's going to make somebody else money. We don't ask for the basic necessities. I literally listened to Rodney today. I really forgot about changing my school clothes. I thought about everything else I did, coming home from school, the bus, going to play outside afterward, the homework, the whole nine, and changing the school clothes. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's not crazy. It's not crazy because it showed you that it was a place and a time for not only your behavior, your attitude, but also the clothes you wear and how you show up in society. You don't wear your finest clothes out there to play tackle football. You don't wear your best shoes to go out there and play basketball. Well, that should be also our persona and our personalities, and when we show up in places as a community. We talk about how our children show up, right? I bet you, Rashi, if you polled your kids on Monday and asked them, how many of you change your clothes when you get home from school? I bet
I
you.
know they don't. They still got the spaghetti they mama cooked on their school pants. They
Well,
won't even wash them out in the
well,
sink with the Don you couldn't find me with some of the stains my
but
kids. Never mind.
but I don't want to blame the children because that's something that you have to be taught. But I do want to point out.
You have to be taught you don't have to look dirty, Mister. Come on now. No, I ain't trying to be funny.
No,
I
no,
mean, hold on.
no,
You see
Rashi,
your shirt got stains on it.
Rashi. I definitely want to be dead serious when I say this. we make assumptions that people should already know, and so we don't teach. They need to be taught. And the assumption that people automatically know is part of the Eurocentric thinking. Goes back to what I'm saying, why Rodney's saying that. It kind of like, I know I did it, but until he said it, I didn't even think about it. Then I thought about, my kids had to take their clothes on. That'd be like the yelling point in the house. But when you think about the overall, these are things that you say and you do, but you don't really think about you saying and you doing it, right? Hey, what you got that shirt on out there playing basketball? I just got you that shirt, right? You don't think about that. You don't think about it. And you don't think about how that impacts how you show up and do things. It's almost like a uniformity of coding, if you will. Now, I know some people can't afford the better things, and I'm not saying that to knock those people. Some folks, they only got a handful of, even maybe 2 or 3 shirts, 2 or 3 pairs of pants. And then with those folks, Rashi, they washing everything because they got to make what they got.
And they put it under if it's wrinkled, you put it under your mattress. If when your older brother grow out, them is your pants now.
That's it. That's if you got a mattress. And so those things that we sometimes take for granted, and I feel like, once again, it's part of that Eurocentric paradigm. We almost assume automatically that everybody has these things or have these beliefs or have these principles or have these routines. And the reality of it is we all don't. And when we talk about what we did when we got home from school and how things were set up, when you sit back and you think about it, you say, well, dang, listen to what Rodney is saying, and then think about how that transferred to him being in the military. Think about that, right? And so for me, it doesn't show up necessarily in mine, and I don't want to say it like let me say this about myself. I have a successful life by every stretch of the imagination from where I come from. And so I want to make sure I say that first and foremost, because I've had the abilities to do things that people would expect from a person like me. And I too was one of those people that they could not understand my processing and why I don't have to read the entire book to understand the ending. I have a high comprehension skill set. Part of my impatience with people.
Come on.
Because I get it, and I don't know why you don't get it. So with that being said, I feel like what we're seeing with the schools, and I wish we would have really spent more time on this, because to me, the same governor who talked about changing slavery inside of the school books in the text of Florida is the same governor that's talking about changing the labor laws. And why do they want to change the labor laws? And then they're attaching it to deportation of immigrants. What jobs do they associate with immigrants? And we're talking about kids working in fields, picking fruit and other things at the same time when they're telling us they can't, AI is going to replace all of this. You guys have to listen to these people who are trying to rewrite history, erase certain parts of history, gains, as well as bad deeds by white people. I joked about it consistently, but I'm serious. They're trying to run us back to the watermelon. And what I meant by that is they're trying to run us back to a plantation style life. And if we don't let our vanity get pushed to the side, and we need to wake up. America has to wake up. And I'll say this one piece because I keep seeing this online, and I keep seeing online from one group, and I'm not trying to be divisive, but I saw this also when the young lady got murdered inside of Kentucky. When she got murdered in Kentucky, it was, we're tired of fighting for black men. We're going to stand up for sisters only. Today, the conversation is they want to see us get upset. Black people be calm. Hell no, you better not be calm. Being calm is almost like saying you're going along with what they're doing. Get out, get activated, get acclimated, make some noise. Hell no. It's what you got to tell these folks. We have to really think about it. And I know we're mad at Target, but I would say our boycott with Target, just for a couple of $100 million that they said no to, is juvenile compared to what the hell this federal government is doing, and us not having the balls to stand up to it. Target is a small fry. They may not make it out of this administration. Look at the stock numbers. Once they're gone, what's the next thing you're going to protest?
Amazon.
No, you better start with this federal government. It's an old saying. If you're going to win the yard, you go find the toughest bully on the block. You go whoop Trump's ass, then you ain't got to worry about Amazon.
We're doing it, brother. It's
No,
the town hall meetings. Have you been checking?
Sister Rashi, white folks are doing it. White folks are doing it. White folks are doing it.
True that.
And then we're letting them fight the fight as if they're going to somehow, some way advocate for something for us. I'm just listen, and I don't publicly try to disagree when we say we protest and stuff. I try not to. I try to keep it on code. I'm trying to stay with the code. But if I'm looking at this out of Florida, are we going to speak up to that? Because if that becomes a law, that means that young black boys and girls in Florida can be put in situations where they are working on plantations again. And then, like I said again, the Republicans talk a lot about transgenders, but they don't talk about their pedophilia lust. And that's the problem for our community, more so than transgenders.
Brother Rodney,
Yes,
you were
ma'am.
asking for a theme. You've listened this whole time. What would you think our theme was for tonight, for today?
Wow. I mean, just from our conversation today, it's almost go back to basics.
So I like, you know how I am. I'm like, what we gonna do? What we gonna look? I believe that if you don't have books in your home, it's a problem, right? How
That's a
about
problem.
if you have a dwelling? Because I'm about, you know how I am, brother. Right? Y'all know, actionable information, right? Not just information of what had happened, but what can be done. How about I'm down with if you don't have books in your room, if you have children in your home and there are no books on their grading level below or above, it is now time for you to get books in your room. All right, your turn, Brother Barry. What can we do for real in our home? Do in our home. You can't control the classroom quite yet. You can please ask your teacher to differentiate, but you cannot enforce her job or his job on him. But what can you do at home if you really care about advancing the education of your child?
Well,
Actionable.
I would say I think you just have to introduce your children to higher levels of thoughts than outside of yourself, and expectations that are higher outside of yourself. You know, people I know who have books on the shelf inside of their home, they got kids who can read. What's the coincidence? The books subconsciously tell your children that they should be reading, and they typically read above grade level. That's one thing. So you can buy some books. The second thing I think you must do as far as an action step is that I think that you have to, as Rodney said, he was told you can do it, Rod. My children and I had an affirmation that I borrowed from Wu-Tang that I would say to my children on the way to school. And if my daughter was here or my sons, we would say the power of God is in you. And they would say, and I say, what you gonna do? And they say, show and prove, show and prove. And they would go into shout out to my brother Trevor Sankofa. He's a Wu-Tang fan. I'm a Dog Pound fan. He loves New York. I love LA. But that was our affirmation every morning. And my children went to predominantly white schools. But that's what they knew. The power of God was in them. And we would say it. And my youngest two, because they went to school not too far apart, we would be driving to school saying, the power of God is in you. Show and prove, show and prove. The power of God is in you. Show and prove, show and prove. The power of God is in you. True. The power of God is in you.
Don't
Show
get me to
and
singing.
prove.
Now you affirming me. So is it the foundation? So we talking about three things here. The foundation of the knowledge is
Yeah,
the urban core. Come on, the struggle, the street. The timing is before public indoctrination.
Yes.
The person is someone who is consistent and repetitive in their expectation. All right. The mantra, the family mantra. All right, come on. What can they do, Brother Rodney? I'm not talking about think about what has to be done. I said the book, the text, something has to be there. Brother Barry said, yeah, they have to take it off the shelf, look at it, and incorporate it into a family mantra that they arm themselves with before they leave out the door. And Brother Rodney,
You have to have love for the family. You have to have love for your family. When you have love for your family, that creates a level of commitment. That means you will go beyond things that you would normally be able to do to ensure that you bring about what it is that you're seeking. And sometimes it seems like we just don't love our. And I'm not talking about just our children. I'm talking about our family, because
yeah,
the family is the foundation to all things.
yeah,
And sometimes it seems like we don't love our family. We have beef with this one. Even moms and their daughters, dads and their sons, they there's a disconnect.
yeah,
As long as we're disconnected, that means we're leaking power.
yeah,
We have to reconnect that. And to the a message to the sisters and brothers is we have to look at ourselves differently. We're not just objects of pleasure for one another. We have to look at ourselves as being the foundation of all that is. So it starts with us. If we're not doing it, if we're not displaying it, if we're not encouraging it, so you can have books in the house, but if you're not reading to your children or your children are not seeing you read, then the books may just stay on the shelf. So we have to be the example for them to emulate. And sometimes we present them with too many negative examples, so they emulate the negative example,
yeah,
right? And so we're starting out at the beginning. If we're starting out at the beginning on the foundation portion of it, we have, you already hit on the books. We know that according to the data, and I'm glad you all talk about data. According to the data, a black child with 10 books or more, but specifically 10 books that they choose, they're more likely to read it. It means that they develop a love for reading and they get that comprehension that Brother Barry has. There's a lot of our children today, even those who can read, don't have a level of comprehension. Well, reading is a part of the process, but you have to be able to comprehend what you read. And the more you read, the better off you'll get. But if families love one another, if families are willing to set aside whatever they have as adults for the benefit of their children, i.e., maybe I don't read the best, but they still see me with this book at whatever level. So, since you talked about reading and we talked about the mantra of instilling that belief in the child, then we have to love the children. We have to love one another, and we have to actively demonstrate that to our families. And so that's key for me.
I'm
Hey, I
gonna
got
close
I
out.
got a comment that someone said. They said Delarisa Summers, who's my cousin, said they took our gold, told us we were poor, took our God, told us it was bad, took our freedom, told us we were slaves.
There's a lot that's been
Can I
taken.
comment on that one real quick?
Yep.
I know we have 10 minutes left. In the other one of our other shows, remember I said that when I was in elementary school, my mother bought me a set of black encyclopedias.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Change just what you said. I did not know any of that until I read those encyclopedias and I found out about who I really was.
Right.
Totally was a paradigm shift for me. Expanded my concept of me and of us. And it also showed me with more finer detail who they were, right?
Uh-huh.
So the concept of God had nothing to do with me because God was always a white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed
Yeah, the Quaker
individual,
Oats man. Yeah, the
right?
Quaker Oats man.
But then when I found out that when the Bible said man was made in God's image and that the first man came from Africa and looked like me,
It
Yeah.
was a woman. Yeah,
wait a minute. I'm God. I'm
Right.
not the devil, because remember, black was devil and the sons of Ham were cursed with the
Cursed.
skin color of black, right? Well,
Yep.
those of us who were raised up in the church, even though it was subliminally done, it was still done. So the fact that I got to find out that I was made in God's image, I was somebody. When I found out that the center of learning was in, what was it, Shanghai and Timbuktu, and that the
that's
ancient
right.
world, including Greece, went to Africa,
If they wanted to know anything, come on, brother Rodney, put them.
that it didn't start with the Romans and it didn't start with the Greeks, but it started in the Library of Alexandria with the Egyptians. When I found out that Pythagorean theorem wasn't created by Pythagoras, but he
But
went to
previous, come
Egypt
on,
and
come on.
learned it, and they had been doing it for at least 300 years. See, when I learned those things about who I was, that told me about me. And that told me that everything they said about me, that I'm ugly, when Cleopatra and so many others were the examples of beauty in the ancient world. Black people were the examples of beauty. Because, like, remember Dr. King said, "Who told you you were ugly?" And
Yeah.
Malcolm said the same thing. Well, I believed that because I had black skin, that my intellectual ability was limited. I
Uh,
believed that I was someone that was reprobate because I was ugly with black skin. Therefore, I'm something that should be rejected. When I learned those things about me, and what I'm getting to is hugely important. And you mentioned Brother Travis Sankofa, and I think that Sankofa concept of go back and fetch it, go back and fetch the knowledge, because they
yeah.
did take all of that from us, and then they took claim to it and put it in their museums and made us pay for it to go see it on occasion. But that we have to know knowledge of self is hugely important. So when we're reading, don't just give them Harlequin romances. Let them pick out the books
Hey,
they
hey,
want,
hey,
but
hey,
guide
hey,
them.
hey. The
Guide them.
vocabulary program of the Harlequin, those heaving bosoms, her voluptuous. Hey, my vocabulary is at least a third Harlequin romance. I even know the arabesque
Hey, Sister
from the.
Rashi,
Okay,
I will one up you in that. And remember, I also told you that in 1967 or 66, 67, I got my first Black Panther comic book when I was able to walk to the
come
library in
on.
Brooklyn, New York. And the level of vocabulary reading comic books is so much further than almost any other general reading that we do.
Yep.
And
Listen,
it was from those words that I had to look up to understand what I was reading that helped advance me well
to the
beyond
level
my
you are,
years
come on
in
now.
reading. So what I'm saying though is there's some basic foundational things that we can do. Buying books and having those books in our homes and reading those books and exposing those children to it, and then taking all of those negative things that they said about us and showing our children the truth,
Yeah.
that is empowering to them, and it gives them a different view. Now they're not looking at themselves through the eyes of the oppressor. They're now looking at themselves through the eyes of the greatness that has been the Black person for the majority of the existence of mankind on this planet. That is a major paradigm shift in our children's forward momentum, I believe.
I'm a big fan, and I'm gonna close out with this, fellas. Is show them what you do, and if it's ugly, let them judge. For the last two generations, my daughter and my granddaughter, if I'm in the classroom, I show them my classroom. I bring them to my job, not necessarily while I'm teaching. That has happened once with my son. He had to come to school with me while I was teaching. But I showed them why I wake up in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning and I prepare for my reality with other people. I show them. Now, when you a dope man, are you ready to show them what you do? If you're a man who works in a factory, can you tell your, I need to show my children to the best that I can what I do. Maybe you get a new, maybe you do get this new little employee, what you say, Mr. Thomas, uh, of this new employee that they trying to indoctrinate out of our youth. Maybe that is it. But if that's it is, I need to show my child that I clean toilets, that I sweep the stadium, that I am a cop, then I risk my life, that I show them the actual real life work as best as you can. Maybe it's not on the job, maybe they're videos or what you understand. Show them what it is you have decided to do with your life, and you won't get this underlying apathy like there is nothing, like life is going to happen to me. I believe the actual problem is children believe that life is going to show up, like some life, some reality is going to impress itself upon them, and they don't have any real power to go out and choose said vein. They think they're walking and there is no lane. There's one lane, and they have to just keep walking. They don't see that if I read this book, I could go left, or if I see my father do this job, I could go right, or if my you understand, there's they don't see the variation of the life journey. And so, my last thing to say is show a child an actual vein of life journey reality that is found, and maybe what you'll get is that compliance. You'll get that buy-in. It'll kill that apathy, like shit ain't nothing out there for me, because they'll see that's definitely not true. If nothing else, you can be a military veteran. You can be a person who works for the Department of uh Homeland, not Homeland. What is the what department are you under? I forgot. Health and Human Services. You would be under Health and Human Services. You can work as an advocate for Health and Human Services. You can work for the Department of Education like I do and find your place in that strata. You can find your place. It's not, you don't have to invent it. You can just find what you like to do and get in there. So I advocate for you, brothers, and thank you so much for allowing that Sizemore. And if anybody's wondering, she is online. Sizemore, Barbara, Doctor.
So I'll close it out with this thing. The best thing that we can do for our children is not believe that clicking like, hearting, or commenting on social media is the fight. The fight is in public. And we have to make sure that our children are not put in a position where they are placed to be back on the plantation. That is our duty. I don't want my children to imagine what it would be like to have limitations. I want them to imagine the world without limitations. That's our job as parents. That's our job as elders. That is what the people whose shoulders we stand on did for us. We have to pay it forward. Let's stop coming up with the excuses. Let's come up with the actions. And by that, we pave the way for a new day. And that's it for Real Radio for this week. As Lee always says, if no one else told you, We love you, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. We'll be on next week. Make sure you're here. I want to say 10 a.m. Central, which is 8 a.m. Pacific for Brother Rodney, as well. Sister Rashi's on the same time as 10, and so am I here in Minnesota. So we got Minnesota, Atlanta, Minneapolis, Atlanta, Kansas City, and Las Vegas. I want to say this cities to give them their props. But thank you all. Enjoy your weekend. Watch the March Madness. I'm about to try to get me some medicine and go lay down. Thank you all. And Brother Rodney, Sister Rashi, excellent work. Brother Lee, we'll touch bases with you to find out what happened on that red carpet. But y'all be well. Peace.
Peace.
It won't let me end the stream. Oh, there we go.